Hi, I'm Odalyn. I packed my son's favorite snack, kissed his cheek, and watched him hop into my sister-in-law's SUV, smiling like the world was safe. An hour later, my niece called in tears. "He won't wake up," she whispered, "but Mom says it's just a prank." My hands shook dialing 911, but what shattered me more was realizing it wasn't a mistake. It was a setup. And the worst part? People still defended her. If you think this ends in court, you haven't seen what I found next. Before we dive in, what time are you listening, and where from? Drop it below. This story needs to be heard. The morning started like any other. A late spring sun casting soft shadows across my driveway. The air warm and buzzing with the scent of blooming crepe myrtles. Caleb was lining up his tiny animal figurines in front of the screen door, murmuring a little script to himself in that half-whisper that only I understood. He wasn't the kind of child that blended in at birthday parties or thrived in crowded classrooms, but he had his own kind of light, a quiet, deliberate light. And today, that light was flickering with rare excitement. The phone call came just after 10 a.m. when I was refilling my coffee and scanning wireframes on my laptop. I didn't even check the caller ID. I just tapped accept and balanced the phone between my ear and shoulder. "Hey, Odalyn," came the sugary voice that made my stomach turn before I could respond. "It's Callista." Of course it was. Callista, my sister-in-law, the PTA queen of Barton Hills Elementary, the woman who once told me at Thanksgiving that Caleb would probably grow out of his little quirks if you didn't baby him so much. I braced myself. She never called, not without an agenda. "I was thinking," she continued, voice syrupy and fake, "maybe it's time the kids had some real cousin bonding. Lily's been asking about Caleb for weeks now. There's this great new trampoline park up in Round Rock. I thought I'd take them for a couple of hours, grab some ice cream, something light and fun." I didn't answer right away. My grip on the mug tightened. The last time Callista had shown any interest in my son was when she passive-aggressively commented on how he couldn't sit still during Easter lunch. And now, she wanted to bounce around a warehouse of flashing lights and loud music with a sensory-sensitive 6-year-old? "I know we haven't spent a ton of time together," she added quickly, sensing my silence. "And I feel bad about that. Just thought it could be a reset." A reset. She made it sound like an Instagram caption. I turned to Caleb, who had now pressed his nose to the glass, watching a squirrel leap across the fence. "Caleb," I said gently, "Auntie Callista wants to take you and Lily to the trampoline park today, just for a little while. Would you like that?" He didn't answer with words. He rarely did when he was excited. But his face lit up like Christmas morning. He bounced on his heels and nodded hard, reaching for his shoes. That look, it undid me. So, I ignored my gut. I packed his little backpack. Organic apple slices, gluten-free crackers, a change of clothes, the noise-canceling headphones with Paw Patrol stickers. I tucked in a folded pink handkerchief Lily had given him last summer. He kept it in his room like a treasure. I whispered, "If it gets too loud, this will help you feel brave." He wrapped his arms around me, face pressed to my ribs. I kissed the crown of his head and smiled, even as my throat closed. Callista pulled up 10 minutes later in her spotless SUV, windows tinted, music low and tasteful. She stepped out in white linen and big sunglasses, waving like we were neighbors in a commercial. "Hey there, buddy," she chirped. "Ready for some fun?" He climbed in without hesitation. She didn't even ask about his allergies. As the car pulled away, I stood frozen on the porch. The air felt too still. Something inside me twisted. 2 hours later, the phone rang again. I was in the kitchen, rinsing Caleb's lunch container, thinking I'd prep a light dinner before they got back. I saw Lily's name flash across the screen. I smiled and swiped to answer. But what came through wasn't her usual babbling. Auntie," her voice broke, swallowed by sobs. "You have to come. Mom said it's just a prank, but he won't wake up. He's not waking up." Everything in me collapsed. "Where are you?" I choked out, already grabbing my keys. "Lily, where?" "The park, by the big swings. I don't know. I'm scared. He won't wake up. I didn't hang up. I just bolted. I was down the porch steps and in the car before the next breath. My hands trembled as I called 911, voice hollow. My son. My son's not responding. He's 6. He was with his aunt and cousin at Bee Caves Park. Please, send someone. Traffic was a blur. My breath came in shallow, uneven bursts. The world spun past in streaks. Green lawns, pickup trucks, sunburnt sidewalks. I didn't feel my body, only the fire in my chest. Thoughts collided, Callista rolling her eyes when I asked her not to serve Caleb pecan pie. Her laugh when he had a meltdown at Christmas. That child is made of tissue paper, she had said once. I pressed harder on the gas. I ran a yellow light. Tires screeched. Someone honked. I knew better, I whispered into the wind. I knew, and I still let him go. Bee Caves Park loomed ahead, too bright under the midday sun. I veered into the gravel lot, barely stopping before throwing the car into park. The door flew open. My legs moved before I registered anything else. And then I saw him, Caleb, lying still on the grass, his small frame limp like a discarded doll. I opened my mouth to scream, but nothing came out. My legs gave way under me as I dropped beside Caleb, the grass cool and damp beneath my knees. His little body lay limp, pale and still, like the life had been siphoned out of him. His chest barely rose, shallow, uneven breaths that sounded too soft, too far apart. I pressed my fingers to the side of his neck, searching frantically for his pulse. It was there, faint, but real. Caleb? My voice cracked as I cradled his head in my hands. Baby, can you hear me? Lily was crouched beside him, tears streaming down her cheeks, gripping his arm like she could keep him tethered just by holding tight enough. I told her not to, she sobbed. I told Mom it wasn't funny. I looked up, and there she was, Callista, standing a few feet away, arms crossed like she was annoyed that we were ruining her afternoon. He just got a little too worked up, she muttered, with a lazy roll of her eyes. Kids get dramatic, especially ones like him. Ones like him. I couldn't feel my face. I couldn't even feel my hands. But I stood, slowly, every inch of me trembling. What did you give him? She blinked at me, feigning confusion. What are you talking about? What did you give him? I roared. Heads turned. A father on a nearby bench froze mid-sip from his drink. Callista shrugged, pulling her phone from her pocket. It was just a joke. Relax. He'll wake up. I noticed her screen flicker, her thumb sliding across it with practiced ease. She was deleting something. You filmed him? I gasped. You filmed my son like this? She gave me that smug half-smile she always wore when she thought she had the upper hand. He was acting weird. I thought it might help you realize how overprotective you are. I turned toward the nearest group of parents and yelled, "Someone call an ambulance, now!" A woman with a stroller already had her phone out. I could hear the sirens before I even registered the flashing lights. Caleb's body felt colder by the second. I bent back down, brushing his damp hair from his forehead. Stay with me, baby. Stay with me. The EMTs arrived, moving fast, voices clipped and focused. I stepped aside, heart hammering as they worked over him. Oxygen mask, IV, rapid checks. One of them turned to me. Do you know what he might have ingested? I shook my head. He was with her, my sister-in-law. I packed his food myself, no allergens, no meds. He nodded and looked toward Callista. We'll need a tox screen immediately. As they lifted Caleb onto the stretcher, I climbed in behind him. My legs moved on instinct. I barely noticed Callista stepping toward us, face twisted in false concern. She's overreacting, she shouted. He's just tired. I didn't do anything. But then Lily's small voice rang out, clear, trembling and damning. Mom made him drink something. Silence dropped like a stone. Everyone stopped. What did you say, sweetheart? One of the officers asked, kneeling beside her. She said it was juice, Lily whimpered, but it smelled funny. Then he got sleepy and wouldn't wake up. The officer straightened and turned to Callista. His tone shifted. Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to step over here. Hands where we can see them. Callista's face drained of color. Wait, what? Are you serious? This is crazy. But I didn't hear the rest. The ambulance doors slammed shut. We were already moving. The fluorescent lights of the emergency room blurred as I followed Caleb's gurney through swinging doors, past rows of machines and hushed nurses. The walls smelled of antiseptic and adrenaline. A nurse guided me into a room where they hooked Caleb up to monitors, oxygen tubes, IV lines, beeping. So much beeping. I sat beside him, holding his limp little hand. His skin was still clammy, and every few seconds I checked, again and again, that he was breathing. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I should have protected you. I never should have let her near you." The door creaked open behind me. "Odalyn?" I turned. James, my brother, Callista's husband, the man who once laughed off every warning I gave about her. He stood there like a ghost, confused, panicked, clutching his phone like a lifeline. "What the hell is going on?" he asked. I stood slowly. "Your wife poisoned my son," I said. He blinked. "What?" "Don't play dumb, James," Lily told the cops. "She made Caleb drink something. That's not—" He looked away, then back. "Amber, she wouldn't. She's not. She did." His face crumpled. "You don't know that for sure. Maybe it was an accident." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The truth was already carving its path through the lies. The door opened again. A man in a navy windbreaker and a badge stepped in. "Ms. Merrick," he said calmly, nodding. "We need to ask you a few questions about what happened. Callista's lawyered up. She says it was an accident." I didn't flinch. "Was it?" The detective sighed. "Preliminary blood work came back. Your son tested positive for diphenhydramine and ethanol." A slow, sharp exhale escaped me. So it wasn't just a bad joke. It wasn't just a prank. It was deliberate, measured. Something inside me began to crack open, not grief, not yet, but rage so deep it almost felt cold. I glanced back at Caleb, still unmoving beneath the hospital sheets. And just like that, the version of Callista they all believed in started to fall apart. I didn't sleep. The monitors in Caleb's hospital room beeped steadily through the night, each sound hammering into my chest like a warning. I kept watching his chest rise and fall, as if he might stop any second. The first light of morning crept through the blinds, but the weight in the room didn't lift. I hadn't moved from the chair beside his bed except to pace in tight circles, like a caged thing. James returned just after dawn, still in yesterday's clothes. He stood at the edge of the room, awkward and silent. "He's stable," I said before he could ask, my voice flat. James gave a slow nod, rubbing the back of his neck. "They're running more tests, right? They already found diphenhydramine and alcohol in his system. What more do they need?" He exhaled, but didn't meet my eyes. "I'm just trying to understand how this happened." I turned toward him. "She drugged him." Lily said it. "The EMTs confirmed what was in his system. You think he poured himself a cocktail of allergy meds and liquor at 6 years old?" James flinched. "Of course not. But maybe it was. Maybe it was an accident. Something he picked up somewhere else. Or maybe you searched something online?" "I don't know, Odalyn." I stared at him. "You think I did this?" "No, I'm not saying that. God, no," he said quickly. "But the cops said there was a search history. I searched allergy interactions because your wife always ignores Caleb's needs. I was making sure the medication I had packed wouldn't trigger anything." He sat down heavily. "It's just, this doesn't make sense. Amber's never done anything like this." I didn't correct him. Amber was the name her Pilates class used, her professional contacts, her social accounts, but we knew her as Callista, the woman who smiled when it served her and spat venom when no one was recording. James's phone rang. He checked the screen and hesitated. "Our mother," he muttered, and stepped out to take it in the hallway. I leaned back in the chair, closed my eyes, and listened to the beeping. I was bone-tired but too wired to rest. He came back in 2 minutes later. "She wants to talk to you." I didn't reach for the phone. "What did she say?" He glanced down, uncomfortable. "She asked if maybe you provoked Callista." I laughed, one short, bitter breath. She said you've always had a way of escalating things, he added almost apologetically. That may be, Callista just lost her temper, and Caleb lost consciousness. James ran a hand through his hair. Ode, are you absolutely sure it was her? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. His doubt said enough. Later that day, I stepped outside the hospital for a moment of air. The sky was that sharp, merciless Texas blue, and the heat settled on my skin like a warning. I opened my phone to check messages and saw one from the detective. Odalyn, we found some search activity on your home Wi-Fi. Queries about allergy meds, interactions. Can you explain? I froze. My fingers went still over the screen. The blood drained from my face. Not accusing, just covering all angles. I walked back into the hospital feeling hollow. Not just because they were looking at me now, but because I realized Callista's mask had slipped, and instead of running, she'd turned around and pointed at me. She wasn't just lying. She was playing the victim, and I was the woman with the weird kid and the messy past, the sister-in-law who never got invited to book club, never quite fit at brunch, the one people assumed would overreact, make things up, seek attention. I returned home briefly that evening to grab clothes and a phone charger. The house was quiet, the air stale. I stood in the doorway longer than I should have, just breathing it in. Toys lay scattered on the living room rug, Caleb's favorite sensory blocks, his tiny sneakers near the front mat, his blanket, crumpled on the couch, still smelled faintly of strawberries. I moved slowly, deliberately, not out of grief, out of focus. This wasn't the part where I cried. This was the part where I prepared. I sat at the dining table, opened my laptop, and pulled up my inbox. Old emails, photos, threads. I scrolled through text messages, the one from last Thanksgiving when Callista said, "He'll just have to eat what everyone else eats. I'm not a short-order cook." The picture she posted of Caleb's meltdown at the school carnival, captioned, "Sensory kiddo losing it? Still love him, though." Every snide remark, every moment she used him to polish her image or dismiss his needs. I created a folder, started pasting everything into a spreadsheet. This was no longer just about being his mother. I was his advocate, his evidence gatherer, his wall of defense. I was the only one left standing between him and a system designed to believe polished women with professional smiles. As I typed, something flickered in the back of my mind. A memory. 17. Lake party. My cousin slipped on the dock and twisted her ankle. "She always brings drama," my aunt said. "Why was she even near the edge?" "You're always too intense, Ode," my uncle added. "Too emotional. Just stay quiet next time." That moment stuck like gum in my mind, just like now. Blame. Silence. Questions about what I'd done wrong, only this time, I wasn't staying quiet. I opened a new app on my laptop. My voice was shaky at first, but then it evened out. "If anything happens to me," I said softly, "this is what she did." And then I hit record. I didn't know what I was going to say. I just knew I couldn't keep it inside anymore. My voice came out quiet, not shaky this time, but steady, too steady. The kind of steady that only comes when you've run out of ways to scream. The next morning, the hospital room was dim and quiet, just the sound of machines breathing for Caleb. I had to leave, just for a bit, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to think, not cry, think. So I kissed his forehead, promised I'd be right back, and headed home. The house greeted me like a museum of before. His little sandals by the door, a half-finished drawing of a dinosaur on the fridge, and on the counter, my laptop still open, spreadsheet glowing, emails pulled up. I sat down, hands trembling, not with fear now, but with something else, awakening. I started rereading the text threads between me and Callista. Years of them. Buried between birthday reminders and PTA notices were the moments I had once brushed off. That's when I saw it. A photo from 2 summers ago. It was Caleb, soaked, curled up on a lounge chair beside the neighborhood pool. Towels piled over him, his mouth open in a silent wail, his eyes terrified. The caption read, "He'll be fine. Builds character." My heart clenched. That day had slipped from my memory, buried beneath every other time I'd chosen not to make a scene. Caleb had only been 3. Lily had pushed him in, giggling. Callista had laughed. "It's a pool, Odalyn. What did you think would happen?" I'd told myself it was an accident, that it wasn't worth a fight, that maybe I was too intense. But sitting there now, staring at his tiny, shivering frame, I knew better. This wasn't the first time. These weren't isolated moments. They were patterns, bold red flags I had folded into napkins and placed gently back on the table, and she had counted on that. I picked up my phone and texted one of her old classmates, Zadie. We'd met once at a school fundraiser. She had rolled her eyes when Callista spoke and whispered, "She always was like that." It was a long shot, but I asked anyway, "Hey, can we talk? It's about Caleb." Less than an hour later, we were sitting across from each other at a quiet cafe on South Lamar. Zadie hadn't changed. Freckles, sharp eyes, that same no-nonsense tone. She sipped her coffee, leaned forward. "I don't know what she did to your boy, but I know this. Callista got kicked out of a babysitting job when we were seniors. The kid, mute, sweet little thing, had a full breakdown after a week with her." I stared at her. "Did they press charges?" Zadie shook her head. "Parents couldn't prove anything, but the girl stopped eating, started wetting the bed again." "What was her name?" "Sarah." My hand tightened around the mug. Zadie wasn't done. "Callista, she used to brag back in school, said she could make any kid cry, even the ones who didn't speak, said it was a gift." She paused. "She didn't grow out of it, just learned how to dress it up." I hit record again, right there at the table. Zadie didn't flinch. "Use it. If it helps, use it." When I got home, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I got to work. In my office, I pinned photos to the wall, post-its with dates, screenshots from Facebook where Callista posted pictures of Caleb with captions like "Our sweet little challenge." I printed out receipts, medications, hospital visits, emails to teachers that went ignored. I highlighted texts where she said things like, "He just needs to grow up," and "Don't be dramatic, Ode." I placed them all in neat rows. I wasn't creating a case file. I was building a war map. At the center of the wall, I posted Caleb's name in bold marker. Then I added something I almost missed. While picking up crayons off the kitchen floor, I saw a drawing stuck under the fridge. It was Lily's. Crayon scribbled figures, a stick boy, a juice box, a speech bubble that said, "Mom laughed." At the top, in shaky letters, "Caleb drank the funny juice." My throat tightened. This was what cracked the silence wide open. The silence I had let fester. The silence people mistook for guilt. I pinned the drawing right beneath the headline, "Before it happened." And I thought of what Grandma used to say when I was small and too bold for the women in my family. "They'll pretend your silence means guilt, until you make your silence mean war." I took one final look at the wall, and I whispered, "Now you've left fingerprints, Callista. I'm not cleaning them up this time." And the first fingerprint I found was hidden in plain sight. The rain started just after sunset. It wasn't a light drizzle, but the kind that seemed to crawl sideways, slamming against the windows like it was angry too. Thunder rolled low and distant, echoing the weight in my chest. I sat at the edge of Caleb's bed, his real one, not the one at the hospital, staring at nothing. The house didn't feel like a home. It felt like a vault. Quiet, sealed, thick with memory. I had come back just to grab a fresh change of clothes and Caleb's favorite blanket, the one with the little green trucks stitched along the hem. But the second I stepped through the door, something made me pause. A blinking light on my phone. One new alert. From the health monitor app I used for Caleb. It said, "Disconnected, sensor unresponsive." But that couldn't be right. Caleb was in the hospital, hooked up to the machines. That bracelet had always tracked his oxygen, heart rate, everything. I reached for the small canvas pouch I'd packed his things in before that play date. I unzipped it slowly. The monitor bracelet was still there. Except, it wasn't his. It looked like it, but it was too light. Too flimsy. I flipped it over. No serial code, no chip. It was a fake. A toy. My breath caught in my throat. She'd switched it. Callista had switched his bracelet before picking him up. There would have been no way to track him if something worse had happened. No vitals, no location, no proof. My hands started to shake. I dropped the bracelet onto the floor, the plastic clicking against the hardwood like a countdown. She didn't just prank him. She wanted control. She wanted silence. She planned it. Before I could sit down, my phone vibrated again. Unknown number. One sentence. Stop digging. Drop it. Think of your son. Attached was a photo. It was Caleb, in our backyard, 2 months ago. He was crouched near the tree line, face turned toward the house, mid-laugh, taken from a distance, from behind the fence. I dropped the phone. Then I locked the doors. All of them. Closed every curtain, checked every window. My heart wasn't just pounding, it was scrambling, looking for a rhythm that no longer existed. Someone was watching us. Not just watching, following, and now they wanted me afraid. It was working. I sat on the living room floor, back pressed to the wall, hands gripped into fists against my chest. The storm outside grew louder, but inside? Silence. I didn't cry. Not loudly, at least. My shoulders shook, but I kept my mouth closed. I didn't want to give whoever was out there the satisfaction of hearing it. I whispered, "What if they take him from me?" For a terrifying moment, I believed they could. I opened my laptop, hovered the cursor over the folder that held everything, the photos, the texts, the statements. My finger hovered over delete, because maybe if I stopped, this would all go away. Maybe if I let it die in silence, no one else would get hurt. Then something made me pause. A photo I didn't remember saving caught my eye. Caleb's birthday party. Last year. He was in the foreground, grinning, icing smeared on his chin. Lily was beside him, smiling but distracted. In the background, barely visible, stood Callista, watching, not smiling, watching. And something clicked. I remembered what Lily had said at the hospital. "I don't want to go home anymore." I stood up, walked straight to Caleb's room, pulled open the drawer on the left side of his bed. Inside, tucked under a pair of rolled socks, was the pink handkerchief, the one Lily had given him, still soft, still scented faintly like baby soap. I pressed it to my face and inhaled, not to comfort myself, but to remember. Caleb had kept it close, through everything. Even while she laughed, even when no one else protected him. If he could hold on, so could I. I wasn't done, not even close. I dried my face with that handkerchief, walked calmly to my desk, pulled out 2 USB drives, and a spare old laptop I kept for backups. I uploaded everything, twice. Then I uploaded to cloud storage under a name no one would guess. The storm shook the house again, but I didn't flinch. Not this time. This time, I wasn't afraid of the noise. I was the noise. And just like that, I chose war over fear. By morning, the storm outside had passed, but the one inside me had only just begun to take shape. The sky was dull gray, filtered through the blinds in my kitchen. I stood barefoot, coffee gone cold in my hand, watching the cursor blink on a Facebook post I'd written and rewritten 5 times already. But in the end, I went with something simple, something that didn't scream, didn't beg. Just the truth. A harmless prank nearly took my son's life. The woman who did it still hasn't said sorry. Here's what I know. I attached 3 files. That was all. A screenshot of a text from Callista. "He's being dramatic. You need to chill out." A short video clip. Caleb, eyes drooping, voice slurred. "I feel weird," while Callista laughed in the background. And finally, a voice memo. Lily's whisper. "She said not to call Mommy. Just wait." I didn't tag her. I didn't mention names. I let the story speak for itself. By noon, it had over 4,000 shares. I kept refreshing it like a heartbeat, each click a drumbeat of validation. Then came the private messages. Some were strangers, neighbors who'd seen her at the club or the church, saying things like, "I always knew something was off." Others were quieter, hesitant, like the one from a woman named Beatrix. She messaged me just after lunch. "Hi, you don't know me, but I used to nanny for Lily when she was little. I saw your post. I'm sorry, I believe you." Then she sent another. She once asked me to give Lily melatonin to keep her quiet during church services, and another. When I quit, she handed me an NDA and said I'd better not say anything, but I never signed it. I'll testify. I stared at the screen. My fingers trembled, not from fear this time, but from the rush of something stronger. Momentum. I wasn't chasing justice anymore. It was chasing me. By mid-afternoon, the ripple had turned into a wave. People were tagging each other, asking questions. Screenshots were flying. One woman posted, "She laughed when a kid passed out? Who even does that?" Then a video surfaced, Callista at the country club, pressed by another mom. "If it's not true, why won't you just show us the chat?" She didn't answer, just clutched her purse, muttered something about drama, and stormed out. That clip went viral before dinner. Around 4:30 p.m., my phone rang. "Odalyn?" It was my attorney. "The DA's office just requested Caleb's medical report. CPS is scheduling an interview with Lily." I didn't smile. Not exactly, but I did exhale. That evening, my kitchen turned into something else entirely. I cleared off the dining table, printed every photo, every memo, every transcript, bought colored tabs, sticky notes, index dividers, labeled everything. Then I built the binder. Every lie she'd told, every slight she'd brushed off, every harmless joke. It all went in. By the time the sky turned from gray to black, I wasn't exhausted. I was focused, not angry, resolved. I changed clothes, tied my hair back, and I drove to the police department, not hunched or hesitant. I walked through the front doors like someone who had nothing left to lose, but everything left to protect. The detective who had called me in the hospital met me at the front desk. He gestured to an interview room. I placed the binder on the table like a final puzzle piece. "I'm not asking for justice anymore," I told him. "I'm demanding accountability." He flipped it open, skimming the tabs. He paused at the screenshot of the birthday party video, the one where Caleb stumbles, and Callista just says, "He's fine. Kids bounce." He shook his head. Then he closed the binder and looked me straight in the eye. "You may want to sit down," he said. "We found something in Callista's financials." The moment the detective uttered those words, something shifted inside me. I didn't even ask what they found, because I already knew this story wasn't just about Caleb anymore. This was bigger. Dirt doesn't stay buried long when you start digging with purpose. By Saturday afternoon, the entire Greaves neighborhood felt like a lit fuse waiting for a match. The HOA clubhouse, usually reserved for bake sales and lawn regulation debates, buzzed like a courtroom on verdict day. Callista was on the board, of course. That was part of her image, the composed suburban leader with matching heels and an agenda to beautify our community. But no amount of blush could conceal the nervous twitch in her cheek today. I wasn't on the invite list. Didn't need to be. I parked across the street and walked across the lot with nothing but my binder, a tote bag filled with labeled copies, and the kind of silence that makes people sit up straighter when you enter a room. The place was packed, not for bylaws, not for new playground mulch. They were here for blood, and everyone knew it. I walked up front and handed 3 manila packets, each marked Exhibit C, to the board president, her assistant, and the treasurer. No words, just paper. Then I turned to the crowd and calmly said, "Page 2. Chairs shuffled. Murmurs rose like a wave as eyes landed on the screenshot. Callista, in a private group chat, calling my son a little pity project, and laughing about how Lily would inherit his scholarships someday since he won't use them. It hit the room like a slap. Someone in the back let out a stunned, "Jesus!" Callista stood fast, arms crossed but visibly pale. "It was sarcasm," she said quickly, voice tight. "Come on. You all know how group chats are. We vent." But that's when Grant, her husband, spoke. From the back, he stepped forward slowly. His eyes didn't leave the packet in his hands. "You sent this while Caleb was still in the ICU." The room fell into a suffocating silence. Callista blinked. Once. Twice. "You think I meant it? You think I wanted—" But no one was listening. Even her closest friends began to slide their chairs away. And then, like the quiet before a storm, Lily stepped forward. She had been sitting near the side door, coloring with an older neighbor's daughter. But now she walked calmly to the front, clutching something tiny in her palm, the pink handkerchief. Caleb's. She looked up at me, then turned to the room. "Mom said I had to give him the drink or else we couldn't play." Gasps erupted like aftershocks. Callista snapped. "You little liar, you don't even remember things right." She lunged, eyes wide, arms out. But the officers stationed by the door had already moved. 2 stepped in, catching her before she got close. "You poisoned her against me?" she screamed as they held her back, her voice raw and cracked, no longer polished PTA perfection, just rage and panic. I didn't move. I didn't yell. I knelt beside Lily, arms open. She collapsed into my hug like she'd been holding it in for years. "No one will ever make you feel afraid again," I whispered. Callista was escorted out, not yet arrested, but her exit was anything but dignified. "I didn't turn your daughter against you," I called calmly after her. "You did that yourself." The room stayed frozen for a beat, then someone clapped, then another, and another, not loud, not chaotic, just a slow, deliberate rhythm of recognition. I didn't stay for the rest. As I stepped outside into the crisp Texas air, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't know. I answered. "This is the DA's office. Ms. Merrick, we've confirmed your statement. We're preparing charges." I didn't speak right away. I looked back through the glass doors, saw the room still reeling, saw Grant sitting with his head in his hands, saw Lily holding the handkerchief to her chest like it was armor, and then I answered, "I'll be ready." The echo of the judge's gavel was still ringing in my head when I stepped outside the courthouse that day. I should have felt a kind of finality, some release. But I didn't. Not yet, because I knew Callista, and I knew she wouldn't go quietly. 10 days later, the courthouse steps were crowded with reporters, neighbors, and more strangers than I could count, some holding cameras, others just holding curiosity. I arrived early, ahead of the press vans and social media moms. I didn't want the spotlight. I just wanted the truth to stand on its own. That morning, I wore no makeup, no pearls, no statement blazer, just a simple blouse, black pants, and my binder clutched under one arm. It was the kind of calm you learn in storms, when you're done crying and ready to be heard. Inside, the grand jury hearing buzzed with quiet tension. My lawyer met me at the security gate, expression tight. "She's trying to preempt," he said. "They released a video this morning, a clip, spliced." He didn't have to say whose team it came from. "They're claiming it shows you being aggressive with Caleb, shaking him." My chest tightened, not with fear, but with something colder. I'd been preparing for this. "Let them play it," I said. The judge entered. The bailiff called order, and sure enough, Callista's lawyer rose. "A motion, Your Honor. New evidence submitted this morning by the defense. A video, raising serious concern about Ms. Merrick's conduct with her son." The judge leaned forward. "Proceed." They played it on the main screen. The room dimmed, the video shaky. A young Caleb, mid-meltdown, screaming, crying. I appeared in frame, crouched beside him. I was trying to get him to hold a sensory toy. In the edited clip, it looked like I grabbed him too hard, yelled, but it wasn't real. What they didn't know, what I'd known for a while, was that the original footage was from 2 different days. Different shirts, different lighting. Even the timestamp data was altered. They thought I wouldn't notice metadata? I rose slowly. "Your Honor, I'd like to respond." The judge nodded. "Go ahead." I handed the clerk a USB. "Your court has the unedited original, complete with metadata and chain of custody. And here," I flipped my binder open, "is a sworn affidavit from Beatrix Hill, the nanny who originally managed the camera this file was stolen from." Silence. I was helping my son through a sensory overload, not hurting him. and the person who edited this, deliberately stitched from 2 different days, is the same one who told my niece to give him a funny drink. A few jurors turned, faces hardening. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. Instead, I pulled out the folded pink handkerchief, held it gently in my hand. "This," I said softly, "was found in Caleb's pocket the day he collapsed. It's not mine. It's not hers. It's Lily's. The only safe thing he had on him that day." The room went still. Even the defense table stopped shuffling papers. That silence, the kind that screams louder than any rant, was all I needed. The district attorney stood. "Your Honor, based on additional forensic validation and the chain of tampered evidence presented here, we formally request that Ms. Greaves be remanded to custody pending trial." Callista stood sharply. "You can't— This is ridiculous." Her voice cracked, shrill. "You're all liars. She's turning you against me, just like she did to Lily." The judge didn't even flinch. "Ms. Greaves, you are remanded to custody without bail. Bailiff—" Handcuffs clicked. I watched her shoulders tighten, her eyes darting, looking for someone, anyone, to stand up for her. No one did. As they led her past me, I leaned in just enough and whispered, "You hid behind smiles and cupcakes. I hid behind facts. Looks like facts won." Her mouth opened, maybe to scream, maybe to spit some final accusation, but the courtroom doors shut behind her with a weight that said, "Enough." 3 months later, the house no longer smelled like fear. Late summer light slanted through the living room window, warm and golden, stretching across the floor where Caleb lay coloring. He was on his stomach, barefoot, humming to himself as he drew wide loops that looked like turtles in spacesuits. I sat nearby, coffee in hand, half full, already lukewarm, but I wasn't rushing to warm it. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, stillness didn't feel dangerous. Callista had been sentenced 2 weeks ago, 14 years, no parole, child endangerment, obstruction, evidence tampering. And the worst one, to me, tampering with a child's medical safety bracelet. I didn't go to the sentencing. I'd already said what I needed in court, loud enough for her to finally hear. Now, the community where she once ruled with cupcake platters and manicured charm barely whispered her name. The HOA removed her signature from everything. The PTA erased her contact info. No one reposted her parenting advice columns. Her name had become something else, a warning. "Lily will be dropped off in 10, came a text from Grant that morning. Grant had filed for divorce shortly after Callista's bail was denied. I wasn't here to praise him, but I noticed he was trying. Therapy appointments, parent check-ins, boundaries. When Lily arrived, she didn't knock like she used to. She just opened the door slowly and peeked in, holding a small tote bag. Caleb looked up and waved. They didn't talk about that day, or the drink, or the park. They talked about cartoons, waffles, space turtles. Today, they were building a little city out of paper towel rolls. Lily was cutting windows with kid-safe scissors. Caleb stacked toilet paper towers and whispered, "This one's a library." And I was breathing. At the end of the visit, just as Grant honked outside, Lily stood. She reached into her bag and pulled something folded and soft. The pink handkerchief. She placed it gently in my palm. "He said you helped him keep it safe." My chest tightened. I knelt beside her. "He helped me too." She smiled. Not the wide, forced smile her mother always coached, but a small, real one. As she left, Caleb didn't cry. He just waved and said, "See you Friday." After they were gone, I sat back on the couch. For a long while, I just watched the way the sun lit up the dust in the air. No one teaches you how to walk through justice when it finally comes. There's no manual for how to feel once the fight is over. But in the quiet, I thought about everything that wouldn't show up in legal transcripts. The guilt. The way my hands shook as I packed Caleb's bag that day. The silence I sat in when my own brother asked if it might have been a reaction. The decades women like Callista win, not with fists, but with whispers, with image, with influence. And how I didn't take her down with fire. I did it with the truth. Now I didn't need her apology. I didn't need to prove myself to the neighbors. I just needed Caleb to sleep again. Deep, without fear. That evening, just as the sky dipped into soft indigo, we sat on the porch steps together, shoulder to shoulder. The cicadas hummed low in the trees. Caleb leaned into me and whispered, "Is the bad lady gone?" I nodded. "Yeah, baby. She's gone." He looked straight ahead. Good. I didn't like her smile. Neither did I, but I didn't say that out loud. He leaned against me, soft and easy. I wrapped an arm around him and exhaled, not because everything was perfect, but because we were no longer scared. Sometimes we fight not to be heard, but to never be silenced again.